look at God's far greater America, right? And it's like, wait a minute, what has God got to do with making America great again? Like, wait, you mean God is involved in politics? Yeah, actually God is colluding. Only nobody knows he's colluding because they don't pay any attention to what he says, right? Bible shows that God is planning a colossal super military force in the days before the tribulation. Now it's true during the tribulation there'll be a one world ruling government with a 200 million man army that kills a third of mankind, and most people have got that imprinted in their brains and they go, yeah, there's going to be big stuff, but they don't realize and focus that there's going to be a World War III before the tribulation even gets started, and it's going to be a colossal world event. So God owns all things and is maneuvering politics to suit the way he plans to save the human-governed world from self-destruction. You know, he's let this thing run on, he's allowed people to do crazy stuff, to develop nuclear weapons, but he plans not to have humanity destroy themselves. He's figured out, you know, who's going to be where and what's going to be happening and so on, and he's written it up in prophecy. So God can reach inside the minds of powerful leaders and have them go in different directions that they might have otherwise gone. In Proverbs 21:1 says, the king's heart is in the hand of the Lord. Like rivers of water, he turns it wherever he wishes. So in one sense, he may have gotten in the head of Hitler and said, this winter would be a good time to attack Russia. Right? And so Hitler sent his troops in the freezing snow to go fight the Russians who know how to fight in freezing snow, you know. And thank God, because that kind of delayed things as far as England. There was time enough to get organized and then, you know, start having England and America fight back and eventually win the war. God has been doing this throughout history, right? So in Exodus, God moved Pharaoh's mind to suit God's plans. In Exodus 7:3, he said, I will harden Pharaoh's heart and multiply my signs and wonders in the land of Egypt. Well, after the first 9 plagues on Egypt, there was only one person in Egypt who wasn't convinced, just let them go. Right? And that person was Pharaoh. And the reason God had to, you know, harden his heart, because the biggest, best, most important plague was the Passover. And if Pharaoh had said after 9 plagues, I'm done, you'll go, no, wait, we've got to fit the Passover in here somewhere, you know. So God can mess with the minds of great world leaders and is doing it now, you know. And I believe he messed, you know, he helped. If you've seen the movie about the guy in England, what was his name? Winston Churchill. You know, I was floored when I saw that movie 6 months, a year ago, that in the movie there's Winston, everybody in Washington, everybody in England says Winston Churchill doesn't know what he's talking about, but he becomes the Prime Minister, and he's telling everybody else in the government, we've got to do this, this, and this. And it's like he's the only one who's saying it. And it's like, anyhow, there's a knock on his door one evening, and his wife comes in and she says, you've got a visitor. And he said, who is it? He said, it's the king. And he says, how do you know it's the king? It's glorious. But you know, God moved different people's minds and different people's thinking and different activities to bring about his plan, and he's doing it again right now. It is so exciting to see God's hand in geo-world politics. So in the book of Daniel, God shows some of the details of God's end-time plan. Daniel 11:40, at the time of the end, the king of the north shall come against him like a whirlwind. Verse 41, he shall also enter the glorious land, Israel, that's God's glorious land, and many countries shall be overthrown. Now, God didn't say, and oh, by the way, this will be World War III. Because it's like nobody would have known what World War III meant, right? But then we had World War I, and then we knew what World War meant, right? And then we had World War II, and it's like, oh, okay, so we had the first one and we had the second one. Ooh, I hope we don't have a third one, right? Well, we're going to have a third one. So verses 40-41 tell us about a giant event where many Middle Eastern nations are invaded and overthrown and captured while Israel is protected, right? And so everybody knows that Israel is surrounded by enemy nations who want to, drive Israel into the sea. They've said it openly, they've said it publicly, they've said it in the United Nations, and in the Muslim book it says, you can kill Jews and you can kill the Christians, right? And so at one time they were expanding into Europe. Eventually, had they not been stopped, Europe would have been a Muslim Europe. So anyhow, it's like none of us would be surprised if tomorrow morning we woke up and we heard there's a massive attack happening against Israel. We wouldn't be surprised at all. It's been happening and happening and happening and happening. And right now in the news, apparently Iran has manufactured some technical equipment that hooks into GPS satellites, and you can attach it to the missiles they've already got that don't have guided missile technology. And they're shipping it from Iran over to the Middle East around Israel. So then the idea is you put this equipment on the missiles, and now instead of just pressing the button and firing the missile and hoping it hits something, now you can tell it exactly where to land, right? And Israel, what, Gary? It's like 15 to 20 miles wide. Is that right? It's pretty close, right? From the Jordan River to the Mediterranean Sea is like about 20, 25 miles, right? You get in your car and drive 25 miles. Where are you, right? You haven't gone very far at all, right? That's how wide Israel is. And they've got enemies on, three sides, not the Jordan area. But anyhow, so everybody knows there's a good chance that Israel will get attacked again. Since 1948, many attacks against Israel have occurred and been turned back, right? And Israel, now the technology is getting to where if you could put a missile through a window, it's like you don't need any soldiers. You just send missiles in and blow things up, right? Everybody knows that another bigger than before attack is going to happen. It's like, well, we wish it wouldn't, and we hope it doesn't, but in fact, there are more and more Muslims every day, and more Muslim countries are getting better and better technology, and they still want to accomplish the same goal. So it's coming. It is coming, and God knows it's coming. And God's written about it coming, and God is preparing to counteract the first big major attack. Daniel 11:41 through 43 describes how a super mega power military friend of Israel, and I stress the friend of Israel, because what great military power on the planet today would try and help Israel if they were in trouble? Would it be Russia? No. Would it be China? No. Would it be Europe? No. Right? It would be President Trump, who loves Israel, who's moved the consulate, the embassy to Jerusalem against all odds. Everybody said, no, don't do it. He's done it. He's the greatest friend of Israel that Israel's probably ever had since 1948. So part of this protecting Israel will include overthrowing and taking captive many enemy nations. Now, we didn't take Afghanistan captive. We didn't just take over everything and set up civil, governments and just run everything for them. We went in and we had an agreement with the government, and we said we're going to go chase the Taliban. When we went into Iraq, we didn't take control of their oil supplies and sell it and use the money for ourselves, right? So we've been to the Middle East, but we've never ever done this overthrow, take captive, and then use the oil, the precious things, for our own purpose. Now, what most people forget, like the recent history, it's like they can only think of what happened last year or the year before. Right? America's invaded the Middle East 3 times in recent decades. And it's like, the young people who have been born since the invasions, it's like, what war? What invasion of the Middle East? What are you talking about, right? But one case, Iraq invaded and captured Kuwait. Then America launched an attack and drove the Iraqi military out of Kuwait and halfway back to Baghdad, and then came home. And it was like, yay, we did it, right? And then in early 2018, news reports showed that America's military was at about World War II levels. And it was like, when I first heard that, I thought, no, that can't be right. That just can't be right. We had less commissioned ships that were operational. We had less airplanes that would actually fly. When that hurricane flew Florida, a bunch of planes, very expensive planes, were left in the hangars and got destroyed, right? And the reason was the engines were out of them, they were being repaired. And half, recently they said half the Navy planes can't fly. It was just like, how can we be so weak and be so strong at the same time? Well, because the governments before have just let everything get weaker and less spare parts and less pilots and less and everything. So currently, America's government has approved $700 billion to upgrade the military in this year we're still in. And here we are in October. So, the important thing about military is you have to know how much money's in the checkbook before you order another aircraft carrier or submarine or fleet of airplanes, because if you don't have the money set aside to pay for it when it's finished, it's like they're not going to start building it. It's like, so you have to plan, well ahead. Okay, and then Trump has got another $716 billion for 2019. Okay, so when all that money is spent, which is like $1.5 trillion, man, that's getting to be some money, isn't it? It's like $1.5 trillion. When all that is spent, America's military will be far greater than it has ever been. All right? Donald Trump plans to continue building the American military to become supremely strong, because in his mind, and he's thinking like, a lot of people laugh at this, but he's thinking like a rational, logical person, that if you're holding a shotgun against somebody's face, they're going to be kind of polite and friendly. It's like, yeah, what did you have in mind? Right? So he's thinking, if you have a super, super strong military that's better than all the other militaries on the earth, and you have a space program to boot, right, nobody is going to pick a fight with America based on everybody out there is going to act rationally. Except we already know Iran and other Muslim countries don't think rationally, right? They want to die, so they can have their 72 virgins and they go and have eternal life. And it's part of their religion that the more people they're killing when they're dying, the better. So they're not acting rationally. So it's 100% sure that God is planning for a super strong friend of Israel military to appear in the end times. And Trump is spending all this money, right? And then the big question is, what happens in November the 6th, November the 6th voting day? And does he get to spend more billions of dollars on the military into the future, or is it over? Now, if you're watching the news, most of the news is saying it's over, Trump won't be able to do anything after November the 6th. So if Trump is not impeded, right, America will keep on growing stronger, more patriotic, more prosperous, and eventually be strong enough to fulfill God's mission to save Israel out of